Partnered by Times Influence.
Hello and welcome to this very special interview with a man who started off with a vision to enable the wireless network platform, or rather mobility solutions for enterprises. An engineer by qualification, an innovator at heart, and now an advisor and angel investor to multiple Silicon Valley and global startups. I'm in conversation with the president and founder of Aruba, Keerti Melkote. Thank you so much, Keerti, for joining us. It's a pleasure talking to you on this show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, I want to begin by asking you, Aruba is a new age company founded in the early 2000s. So you think that's an advantage when we juxtapose it to companies that have a legacy, because you're born in this age, you understand perhaps the problems of this age, and you can actually come up with exact solutions that actually are needed in this age?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, whenever you have an opportunity to start from a clean slate, and you don't have the history and the baggage to carry, usually you have the opportunity to do things new, do things different, do things that's relevant to the current era of what's happening. And that was sort of the vision we had when we started Aruba. Was wireless was a thing in the personal context. Cellular phones were becoming popular. This was a pre-smartphone era, so we still carried those
heavy mobile
candy
phones,
bar
yeah.
phones and the Nokias and the Motorola's, right? And but if I looked at computing, we were still very much tethered to our desk. It was a big PC sitting at a desk, and when you walk away, you don't get access to the network anymore. And so the difference was wireless. And so I thought, let's make a bet on wireless and change how things are going to be. And it was, Wi-Fi was very early those days. It was not the hot buzzword it is today, but it was a good bet to make.
You know, we've talked about new age companies, so it's it's a little intriguing and an interesting fact to know, how did Aruba really come about? What was the idea, and how did it really translate into this big brand that we're talking about?
Absolutely, happy to talk about that. So I spent my first part of my career, the first decade of my career, in networking and what I call wiring the desktop, and or plugging into the network, as we called it back. I was at Cisco back then, and so the idea was Ethernet was the technology, and then you take a PC or whatever, a phone even, and plug it in to the network.
I can relate to it, but
Yeah, you probably cannot. You're probably too young for that. But that's the world I grew up in. And then I was looking around. As I said, I asked myself the question: so what's next? And it seemed to me that sitting at a desk and connecting was fine, but being disconnected when you're away from the desk just seemed like anachronism in 2002, because we all used to have cell phones back in the day, and I just felt, so I can make a call anywhere I go, but why can't I connect to the internet anywhere I go? So I started to look around, and there was this fledgling technology called Wi-Fi. It was not even called Wi-Fi back then. It had this arcane name called 802.11b. And I was like, okay, what is 802.11b? Let me look at this. And so my training was go talk to customers and see what they say about anything, right? First customer last is a brand that, a cultural motto for Aruba. So they started back then. So I spoke to several organizations that I felt could be customers of this technology. And when I talked to them, they said, look, it's a great idea if it was secure. Wi-Fi was not secure. And if I cannot trust the connectivity, then I'm not going to embrace it. If it is not high performance, then I'm not going to embrace it, because I'm used to high performance from the wired side. And if it is not easy to implement and manage, I'm not going to embrace it. Those three things became, instead of going away and saying, hey, those are barriers, I took them on as, that's my problem statement. If I can solve security, if I can solve performance, and if I can solve management, I have a business. It took me about a year to actually build the product and take it to market, another year to build the basic customer base, the first set of customers that would embrace, and then after that, the rest is history in terms of growth.
And your collaboration with Hewlett Packard has only enabled that even further.
Yeah, so we grew independently, Aruba, from being that little idea to being a billion-dollar business. We were public on the stock exchange on NASDAQ for about 8 years. And then HP started to notice us and say, hey, this does seem like the next thing. And this was when Meg and Antonio called me and said, we're interested in talking to you guys. And it became clear to us that for us to grow, the reach of HP would be very valuable, especially internationally. And so it made a lot of sense to combine forces and go after it.
So, as you said, your technology vision has propelled Aruba to enable wireless solutions actually to the next level, if I should say, and now integrate them into the core of the network as well. Do you think perhaps this is one of the best times for companies like yours to be in India with the whole digital vision panning out the way it is and the digital push that everyone's embarking on?
Absolutely. We've been in India for quite a while now, almost a decade. We started operations here through R&D, which is typical for most companies. We come here and great engineering talent. So we started in Bangalore and started operating in the market as well. But the last couple of years and the vision around the digital India is absolutely phenomenal. And we can see the growth. You can feel it in the air as you land in India. So it's really exciting times. And that's really the context of my visit as well this time.
So can you talk about some of the innovations in the company that is enabling secure mobility for enterprises?
Sure. The first thing with wireless, when people think of wireless, right? Of course, from a consumer perspective, you can sit wherever you are and connect to the internet. But the security aspect is very important for enterprises and governments, and especially today with cybersecurity being such a big issue, and nation states attacking each other in the cyberspace, right? So with wireless, what happens is the unfortunate side effect of wireless is when you transmit a signal, it doesn't only go to the tower or the access point, it actually radiates everywhere. So you could be inside a building transmitting data, and a hacker could be sitting in the parking lot sensing what you're sending. So it was critical for us to solve for security from the early days. And that's something when I started the company, I spoke to a lot of potential prospects in that time. And everybody said, if you don't solve security, there is no business. And so we took a very deep interest in making sure it is secure from the ground up. So when you implement Wi-Fi, it is implemented in a secure way. And today that has come to be a huge benefit for us because of what's happening in the cybersecurity space.
But whenever I speak to organizations who are obviously joining the digital bandwagon, their concern over anything else, whether it's interface, whether it's the technology, is still security. Do you think we've managed to crack that security framework that perhaps, as opposed to the West, if I would compare, whereas giving that secure framework to companies is concerned, or to enterprises is concerned?
Yeah, I think we are getting better every day. Security is a ongoing battle. It's just like anything else, the good versus the bad, right? And the bad guys will always try to get in, no matter what you do. And so it is a matter of how do you keep implementing security that outfoxes the bad guys effectively. And I think we have better tools now to be able to do that, but also just like security in the physical space, security in the cyberspace is the same thing. It's about keeping things secure at the perimeter and the borders, keeping it secure on the interiors, and ensuring there's surveillance in place so that bad things don't happen. The same things need to be done in the cyberspace too.
I've heard a few talks that you've given on various technology forums, and you've really talked about these 4 key drivers that are changing the landscape of wireless solutions, being IoT, security, cloud, and mobility. Yeah. So can you elaborate on those and maybe throw some examples that actually show how the landscape is changing?
Sure. So I mean, look, you started the whole session with a question on what does the new age look like, right? And if you and we take it as granted that mobile is here. Everybody uses mobile devices for both messaging and communications, and for connecting and getting data and content. So that's a given. Mobile is here, it's now, and it's going to be the way of the future. Cloud is also a given. It used to be private data centers used to be the realm of what large enterprises could do. But with cloud, there's been a democratization of data. Right? Anybody can get access to data, whether you're a consumer, a small business, or an enterprise, or a government. So we live, I think, in the mobile cloud era right now. But until now, this mobile cloud era is about users. It's about people trying to connect to the network and do whatever they need to do to remain productive. The next era, in my opinion, is about IoT and the Internet of Things. So it's people, of course, and being mobile, but it's also about things that are connecting into the network. And mundane things, right? Thermostats that sense the temperature in a building, get connected. Now you might ask, why is the thermostat being connected to the network? And the answer is, you can actually, by sensing the environment and the temperature, you can control the temperature of an indoor building and be more energy efficient. And as you think about sustainable infrastructures going forward and being more friendly to planet Earth and these kinds of things, IoT is going to help in a big way to actually enable a better experience for the user.
We've talked a lot, I think, about the opportunities, but I think there are as many challenges as well when we come to implementation of these new age technologies, especially in India.
Yeah.
What are the challenges that you face, as a provider in that sense?
I think the biggest one is honestly a skills issue, because these things are moving super fast and super broad. There's and this is not just India; it is a global issue, where digital skills are pretty rare. And because the technology industry is sort of lives in its own world, it hasn't touched and gone into the non-technology realms as deeply as you take a hospital or take a factory or take pretty much any non-tech area. If you go there, the domain expertise there is, if you're in a hospital, it's nurses, it's doctors, it's caregivers. They don't care about technology necessarily. That's not their job one. But to improve business outcome, patient outcomes, let's say, right, in a hospital, you have to embrace digital technology. And so they don't necessarily have this understanding of what it takes to enable that to happen. So I think the next few years, there is going to be a huge push towards improving the skills on the technical side. And as providers, for us, it's incumbent on us to make sure our technologies are a lot more accessible and easier to use and intuitive. And that, I don't think we do a good job, honestly, in the tech industry of making technology very accessible.
Well, hold that thought, Keerti. Time for a quick breather, but after the break, we discuss the USP of Aruba and their vision on the Digital India mission. Stay tuned. So where do you see the next wave of growth coming from in terms of sectors for you?
So for us, we have worked pretty heavily in the enterprise segment until now. And enterprise, take banking or take industry or pretty much any of the enterprise segments. I think there's continued growth in those segments. We have also played well in education. And back to the skills gap that I talked about, there's a huge initiative to improve the connectivity of educational institutions throughout the nation. So I think education continues to be a big segment. Hospitals and healthcare, I think in India it is a very big need, and I see digital hospitals being a huge opportunity for us. And finally, government, because Digital India has now become such a huge initiative, and it's captured the imagination of, I think, everybody, not only in India but globally. And that's the context of me being here, is building a digital nervous system for the country is a pretty amazing undertaking.
I'm going to come back to the Digital India vision for sure, but how do you see sectors like retail and hospitality, leveraging these technologies? Because that side, I really see something or the other happening, whereas, these solutions are concerned.
Yeah, so retail, hospitality in particular are actually very interesting segments for us. So far I talked about mobile in the context of a worker, right? When you're inside a workplace, how do you use mobile? In the context of retail and hospitality, you can use mobile as a channel to reach the consumer. And we already use that in the cellular context. And what's happened is there is a divide between the online and the offline world. Online is, your Flipkarts and Amazons of the world. And they create a certain experience from a shopping perspective. They know all about you. They know your shopping history. They can then therefore give you recommendations on what to purchase next. So it's a pretty rich experience online. And yet when you go to the bricks and mortar store, the person might know you because you've gone there a lot of times. But especially in larger stores and so on, it's a very impersonal experience. Right? You go pick up whatever you want, you shop and you move on. And they don't necessarily know anything about you as a shopper. And with the digital, what you can do is when you walk into a store or when you walk into a hotel, and especially if you're a loyal shopper, they can actually learn that you have entered the shop and create a more personalized experience for you, and bringing digital into the realm of the physical and bridging that gap.
So, we've talked about organizations and we've talked about companies, and you've also touched upon universities. Everyone is reinventing the way, they work and are moving towards futuristic workplaces. How can, how can they leverage the Aruba platform then, whereas futuristic workplaces is concerned, through collaboration, maybe through different modes of, equipment that is provided?
So what's happening is, if you look at workplaces today, most of the time, when you enter a workplace, it's pretty homogeneous. You find cubicle farms, and the idea is my work is tethered to my desk, my PC, and my phone, my landline phone. And yet, if you think of the modern generation of workers that come in, the phone is collecting dust. Nobody uses the phone, right? Everybody is on their mobile device.
It's for the intercom.
Exactly. And then the PC itself is also an anachronism in this age, right? Everybody is using their mobile devices, iPads or tablets or laptops. So the infrastructure it takes to build this desk and this cubicle farm is significant. You have to pull cabling to all the desks. You have to terminate that in networking equipment in the closets and build up this whole wired workplace, which is not very conducive for the modern mobile era. So our thought was, open the workplace up, make it totally digital, and go back to the pre-desktop era, where human interactions are truly human and technology fades in the background. And that's when true collaboration really happens. And so that vision has been embraced by architects. And they are now designing these new types of workplaces.
And everything on the move also, maybe.
Yeah, and everything on the move, right? And so digital collaboration tools, conferencing tools, these are all available to us. But the idea is, how are you digital, and yet digital is not in your face? It's in the back, and humans get to do what humans need to do in terms of collaboration. That's the idea behind it. The other piece that CEOs care about is, how do you employ the next generation workforce as they graduate from universities and they come in? When they walk in, and what kind of impression are you creating? Your workplace is your brand.
If I had to ask you what sets Aruba, apart from its competitors, and you've been part of one as well, what is the USP really that is driving Aruba now?
So I think it's this mobile-first approach, right? Mobile-first, cloud-first approach, right? So we go in there and basically tell people to think different in terms of how they approach their network. And the past 20 years, most of the thinking was around digital, and IT is the backwaters. And it's the domain of only the CIO. And now, with digital being front and center and modernization being a key thing, how do you transform your environment to be mobile first, cloud first? That's number one. But do it in an economically responsible way, which means we're not asking you to basically keep the old and build the new on top. That's going to be too expensive for anyone. So how do you replace the old with the new and repurpose repurpose the money to going towards the new, right? And that is a disruptive message for those that were built their businesses on the old. And it's very difficult for our competitors who came from that prior era to embrace this vision, because if you built your business, as I said, on cabling, and now I'm telling you, you don't need cables anymore, then it's going to be a difficult transformation.
When we're talking about innovation, we're talking about USP. I have to ask you about this community that is there, which is called AirHeads. What is the concept behind AirHeads?
So AirHeads was a community that we developed. It was a funny name that we gave, because for Wi-Fi, the communication is all in the air. And when I started the company, there was not too many Wi-Fi engineers in the industry. RF was considered this exclusive domain of the graybeards. And so how do you make RF more appealing to the next generation, right? So we came up with this idea of AirHeads. And I needed to build a community of engineers that would feel passionately about this technology and want to learn about it and want to go do something with it. And so we started to build communities and bring engineers together to collaborate with each other. So I would bring my engineers, our customers and partners would bring their engineers, and we would train them or learn about their needs and collaborate together. And that effort started, almost 12, 13 years ago when I started the company, and now it's blossomed. We have over 60,000 AirHeads in the world, and it's continuing to accelerate. And that to me is, you asked about USP, that's the key. My customers ask me, who do you know that can help me implement your technologies? And it's the AirHeads community.
This last mile connectivity, that is the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister. How do you see Aruba contributing to that as a part of nation building?
It's amazing to be a part of this journey, the whole Digital India journey, right? Because as you said, going to the requirement of giving connectivity to everybody, every citizen in India, not just those living in the urban areas, but how do you go out there and not just connectivity in the context of I can make a phone call, I can look up Facebook, but I can truly learn and get my digital content delivered in a high quality manner, high performance manner, requires you to really go all the way to the end and go to the villages and be able to digitally enable them. And fiber grids and digital, sort of the backbone is important to be able to reach everything, but then how do you distribute the signals within the context of a village that last 100 feet? And that is where Wi-Fi is going to play a huge role. It is built on the unlicensed spectrum, which means there's no spectrum auctions that need to happen that I need to monetize on. So it's by definition, it's free. And by the government investing in it, they are giving that opportunity for anybody in the country to be able to jump on to the internet. I had the fortunate opportunity to be with the Prime Minister when he was visiting Silicon Valley. This was maybe a couple of years ago when he had just become a new Prime Minister. And he painted a vision of the real asset of India is its intellectual property. And we have shown that. And if you can get that capability out to the edges, you can truly do magic. And I think that's what this will allow us to do, I think.
But somewhere you feel that there is a lot more talk than what is happening on ground, because I hear two sides of the story when I meet key stakeholders who are involved in that, and they are they're a little iffy about this fact.
Yeah. Look, there is always two sides to any story, right? And people talk about it, but I just look at it through the lens of progress. If you start to expand the time horizons and look at truly the arc of progress, it's been phenomenal. And so I just look at it India from that perspective.
So has the arc of progress also shifted from China to India in some way because of the opportunities that everyone's talking about?
Yeah, I think look, they're both unique nations. I think they're both phenomenal nations in terms of the sheer amount of human resource and capital that is there in both countries. And both have their own unique geopolitics and how they evolve, unique cultures. For me as an Indian, I relate obviously to this place a lot more, and it's with a lot of pride that I see India kind of doing what it's doing, and I think there's a lot more ahead.
Would it be right to say everyone's talked about your technology prowess, but you are actually an innovator and an entrepreneur at heart in that sense. Yeah. So any message that you would like to give, because there is this whole startup surge that India is currently witnessing, and the surge of entrepreneurship, because everyone wants to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So is there any message you would like to give to our young budding SMEs who are actually just venturing into the space, maybe some do's and don'ts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, the one thing I'll tell you is entrepreneurs, being an entrepreneur at heart, you want to go out there and show what you can do, right? And build a great business. You're going to spend your life doing it. As in, literally, when I started, it was 24/7 by 365. The brain never switches off. You're always thinking about what to do next. Right. And so when you're spending so much time thinking about it and doing it, what I advise my entrepreneur friends to do is think big. Because there are many problems in this world to be solved. But if you're solving a small problem, the impact you'll have will be smaller as well. And so try to get yourself to a higher plane so you can think of a bigger problem and solve bigger problems in this world, right? There's more than enough problems to be solved. So that's what I encourage people to do is don't think too small about the impact that you can have, especially given the amount of time you're going to have. The reality is, in Silicon Valley at least, 90 out of 100 companies fail. And I see failure as a sign of progress, right? This is not my first company. This is my first one I started was a part of big companies and small companies, one that succeeded, one that failed. I learned more from the failure than the one that succeeded, honestly, because you know, okay, what not to do the next time around.
So, what does the next 5 years look like at Aruba? Future plans? Any acquisitions that we can perhaps interesting ones?
I wish I could tell you about acquisitions, but yeah, we are super interested in we are acquisitive. We do acquire companies. One recent company I acquired, two companies, was in the realm of machine learning and AI. That's another buzzword that you hear about in the industry a lot. And we brought two companies, one in the context of building a brain for Wi-Fi networks. So how do Wi-Fi networks learn about what's happening and predict what is going to come in the future? And so improve the experience for users. That was one. And the other was to predict bad behavior on the network so we can catch security issues. So AI and ML, I think, are going to be massive movements, and it'll touch pretty much, again, everything. And so that is one area that we're going to be focused on quite heavily. Then there's this other big idea. We're talking about big ideas. We've seen the evolution of the cloud, and how companies like Amazon and Flipkart and others have taken advantage of it and reached the masses. The next decade will be the evolution of the edge, which will be as big as the cloud and maybe even bigger. And that's where Aruba is squarely positioned. The edge is where people are. The edge is where things are. And I talked about this digital workplace. In that vision of the edge, the people inside the workplace are interacting with the things that are inside the workplace to make it a smarter building. Cities are going to get smarter. So as we do more and more of this, the edge will play a bigger and bigger role. So our vision is that edge computing and edge as a place where we are going to build out more capabilities.
Well, thank you so much, Keerti, for giving your time to us and sharing those insights. And I wish you all the best for the future and for the exciting times ahead.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.
Partnered by Times Influence.